Friends, I want to take us through just a little bit about being a Worship Design Studio subscriber and what my call to ministry is and how I try to fulfill that in Worship Design Studio. We're going to talk a little bit about what's coming up for the Easter season that you could use from the Worship Design Studio materials, but also just from the philosophy, the theory of design from Worship Design Studio. And then I'm going to open it up for those of you who have come on live. We'll do Q&A. And those of you who are watching the recording, know that at any time you can email us with questions and we'd be happy to email back to you or even set up a time to talk with you so you can make the most of your Worship Design Studio subscription. Because heaven knows we need all the help we can get right now. Amen. All right. So what you can see here are the topics I'm going to do. As I discerned, and I've done Worship Design Studio has been in existence since 2008, amazingly. When I started doing podcasts to begin with, just audio recordings, but that was 2008. And along the way, I have just kept listening to worship teams, to pastors about what they need. And so basically in my own mission, I have identified three things that are deeply important to me that I feel called to, but also that I have heard from you that are helpful. That's education, inspiration, exhalation. I will tell you about these three things. So that I can help you do what you do by educating you and your worship team, inspire you by offering you worship series ideas, and even very particular ideas. And then exhalation is like taking a big, deep breath and knowing that you are not alone. So those are the three things that are really, really important to me. So let's just take a look at some of those. So here we go. Education, worship arts. My background is in the arts. And so I brought what I knew about the arts. I did that professionally for a decade and brought what I knew about the arts, theater, dance, visual music arts, and combined that with a theology degree and felt really called to teaching as my primary ministry. So began to create ways to teach people about making worship what I call good, right? So sensory rich, meaningful, and memorable, good. And so in the Worship Design Studio, over the years, I have created lots of materials that help train folks in the worship arts. So for instance, if you have an HGTV addict and they want to help, but they've never done a liturgical installation before, then they can come and I have webinars, I have interviews with visual artists, I have very practical tips, even for photography and worship, and what Ted Linden-Hatton calls visual homiletics. We have things about dropline systems, which is about hanging fabric in your space. So all in there for the visual arts, you would send that person and say, just check this out. Let's talk about it afterwards. And so it's really about training your folks and even training you, even if you're not going to be the visual person, to know kind of some of the ways that you can enhance your space in a way that serves the message, right? And we have these same things that you just saw for visual arts, verbal arts, music arts, media arts, and dramatic arts. I think most of those are self-explanatory, but I will say that in dramatic arts, we cover both sort of things you would think about as a drama, monologues and dialogues and choral readings and et cetera, and how to be even just a better scripture reader, but also sacraments, baptism and communion, how to think about those and make those sensory rich, and also children's ministry, children in worship. And we have guest experts who have done interviews and things. So that educational piece is really important to me, that worship becomes sensory rich. And you can see in our fully scripted series that I try to give you examples of that. I try to model that for you through these series. All right, so also you may have people coming onto your team or helping out even for just a season, and they may come from various backgrounds, maybe from a non-Christian background or from a tradition that doesn't do the liturgical year like we do in the Worship Design Studio. And so we have materials for folks to introduce them, just really short bites. It's called planning the liturgical year. And if you have somebody who just needs to know more, like what is Advent, what is Lent, you can actually just give them a short couple of pages. So like, here's Advent, and it's just a little bit bullet points, historical points, theological points, and that helps them sort of get on board about what, say, the Advent season is, or Epiphany, or Lent, that kind of thing. So that's something that we also want to make sure that we're helping you and your congregation. This is a design calendar, and even if you don't follow it religiously, it helps you sort of learn how we suggest that you plan ahead. Here we are in March, and today you are considering the Easter season, and so you're right on task because it's coming up. And then, you know, these are all of the podcasts, the early podcasts in the 2000s that I did about every liturgical year, every lectionary cycle. So all of that is in there. And whether you dip into that or not, just I wanted you to know that part of what Worship Design Studio subscription gives you is not just access to all of our series, but also to that education. Part of that is really important to me, and that's the design process. And in the design process, what I want to do is for you to be able to see the theory, the design theory behind what I do in these fully scripted or DIY series, so that you can do that on your own. You can train your team to do this. And so there's two ways you can do this. One is on the website. We have the design process, and then we have these little short tidbits. You can see these videos are like 2 minutes, 5 minutes, etc. This is an example of finding an anchor image. What does that mean? And so there's a short little video message for me. There's examples. There's a little deeper dive that's about 3.5 minutes, and an action item. And it's really a simple kind of way of learning every step of that design process. And it's good to look at that, even if you're using my fully scripted series and you think you might not need to know all that theory, but it makes so much sense when you look at the scripts and you look at that design process that I have developed over time. And it helps you learn that, so that, let's say Easter season coming up, you're just like, okay, we're going to just do simple order of worship, but we're going to create a threshold moment, like Dr. Marcia teaches us. Get a theme song, write a synopsis. We're going to have an anchor image. And so this is going to be our visual cue, our visual symbol about this. So even just some of the simple things you can apply to your own series. Now, that whole educational process of learning the design process is also available if you like virtual stuff. You go into the Worship Design Studio virtual studio, and your little avatar can go in these little rooms, and inside these rooms, in each one of the steps, is exactly what you saw in the linear version I just showed you, but you get to come in here. And one of the fun things is you can see my little video down there in the lower right when I was recording this. This is like a Zoom platform. And so you could come in with your whole team virtually, and you could be together, watch a video together, talk about it. And this is open 24/7. So it's really, we have created a space for you to have worship team meetings and learn things and discuss. So that is available for you, and we're very excited. That was, of course, a pandemic thing that we did because everybody was virtual, and we wanted to create something fun and delightful. All right, so that's the design process. So really, friends, that is the education piece of what comes with the Worship Design Studio subscription. And I know that it's really hard to, I mean, mainly we're just trying to get Sunday's worship ready, right? And so sometimes it's hard to take a little time out and say, well, let's learn something apart from just what we're trying to do for Sunday. But I hope that you'll maybe once a month go in and study one of those steps of the design process, or go in and look at one of the interviews with a visual artist, or one of the interviews with a media artist, and learn a little something that would enhance and pique your imagination and your creativity. Okay, so inspiration. Inspiration is that value of mine, that part of my mission statement that says, I know worship is not the only thing that you do in your life. And so I want to jumpstart you. I want to catapult you beyond the very first steps, like, oh, what are we going to do for Advent? What are we going to do for Easter season? I want to catapult you past that question and just put a bunch of ideas out there for you to choose from. And that's also part of the Worship Design Studio subscription. So the inspiration part of that is that fully scripted series and DIY. DIY are only available through a subscription. Fully scripted are available a la carte to anyone. But here's the thing. Each one, I mean, you would only have to do 2 or 3 in the year to make the equivalent of the value that you paid for your subscription. And so you have access to all the years, which means you have all the choices, right? It just makes your choices much greater to have a subscription. So fully scripted series are where we create the orders of worship. As you know, those of you who have used them, and I'd love for you in the chat to go ahead and tell me what series, what worship design series have you used already thus far in your subscription, or even if you started a la carte. So we create the orders of worship, as you know, very specific music choices, word choices, just very, very specific. And then you adapt for your context. And you know that we really mean that. You know, I still get people emailing me and saying, is it okay if I change the wording? Or is it okay if I use a different song? Yes, yes, yes. That's what it's meant to be, because I can't design something that is perfect for everybody, right? Everybody's context. And so I expect that you will adapt it. Some people will adapt just little things here and there. And some people take the fully scripted series and they just pull out prayers, or they pull out music choices and they put them in their own order of worship. So there's many different ways to do that. And all of it is fine. All of it is just fine. So the DIY series is where you create the orders of worship out of what we give you in terms of a theme and ideas. So again, you're not starting from scratch where it's like, oh, what are we going to do for Easter? You're looking at something that I have created, that I created a theme, an idea, an approach to the season, an approach to the theology, an approach to the scriptures. And then you look at all the ideas that we offer for all the worship arts every Sunday. And then you say, okay, we like that idea as a thread. We like that idea as a thread. And then you create it on your own. So it's a way where you combine our ideas with your understanding of design and you put it together. And there are many beyond our fully scripted series, many DIY that you can choose from. And I'm going to tell you some of my favorite ones for Easter in just a moment. So that's the inspiration part. I never want you to feel like you're starting from scratch. Again, it's just part of my mission, my ministry, and I am so grateful to do it. And I've been grateful to do it these many years. You're coming in at a great time after I've done many, many series that you have to choose from. Early in the early days, I had my stalwart subscribers who were just, you know, as I was creating them, they were using them. And now we have a library of 13, 14 years. All right. So finally, exhalation. And that is that sense of taking a deep breath. You are not alone, right? So inspiration is never have to start from scratch. And exhalation is breathe that deep sigh of relief that you are never alone. And that has kind of catapulted in during pandemic, because we changed platforms. And even though, you know, it's a little frustrating to be on a platform where I can't make systemic changes to make it easier, but it has created a platform where you all get to connect in ways that you couldn't on our old website. So those of you who are doing good enough, you'll recognize this table of contents, and the shared videos and resources that are happening are just incredible. People are creating new verses to the Threshold song, videos for each, you know, different parts of the services, series trailers, lyrics set to music. So people who have those skills, planning bookmarks, people who have the graphic design skills have made these amazing additions beyond what we've created. And we love this. And so if you are someone who's using our series and you just download it and you just use it and you never come back to the website, I want to encourage you also here in these topics, sermon discussions. Oh my gosh, these are so good, especially in this series. But anytime people are sharing what they're working on. So I'm going to go into Lent 3 because that's what we just came out of and show you. So Ben on my staff creates a lovely kind of prompt, and then people start, commenting and responding to each other and trying out ideas and sharing what they're thinking about. And let me tell you what, all you have to do is dip into this before you really start to organize your sermon. And you're going to get so many ideas from each other, from other people who are dealing with the exact same material. It's astounding to me, and I love it. So education, inspiration, exhalation, and let's just talk about the Easter season then. And then I'm going to open it up for your questions after we do this. But the Easter season is a 50-day season, and sometimes we forget that, or we don't remember that, or we don't kind of, give it its due as a season. We think Easter, we think, thank God I got through Lent, Holy Week, and Easter. And then we kind of have low Sundays until we get to Pentecost. So Easter is a season. It's a 50-day season. And you can do several things here. You've been really hitting it hard thematically for Lent, Holy Week, and Easter. And some of our series start with Easter, but you can absolutely end Easter. This is where you have a choice, friends, right? You have a choice of letting Easter be the culmination of your Lent theme or the beginning of your Easter season theme. And you'll each make decisions based, you'll just look at what we've got here and you'll make that decision. But you could use one of our Made for Easter series, fully scripted or DIY, and I'm going to show you those. You could use even a 6-week ordinary time series and sandwich that between Easter as the end of your Lent series, and then Pentecost as a one-off, and sandwich that ordinary time series in between, right? So I'm going to show you one that I think could work for the Easter series time. Or you could create your own using our design process. So like I said before, you could say, okay, we need to keep going on this kind of good enough thing. And maybe people are really resonating with the gardening flower thing. Maybe flowering is what we need to keep talking about. How the Christian community post-Easter, the Acts is oftentimes what we focus on. How are we blooming where we are planted? How are we growing? And so if you decide that's where you want to go, we don't have one like that. We have butterflies, we have sunrises, we have all kinds of things. But you could say, okay, what song could be our theme song? What anchor image? Okay, maybe a thread item, right? In our design process, we talk about thread items. Maybe a thread item could be people are bringing flowers from their yards every week and putting in a vase together to create the bouquet for the Sunday, right? Instead of having pre-done flowers or whatever. But you see how I'm using the design process: threshold moment, theme song, anchor image, thread items, that same philosophy in creating your own. You could do that as well. So you always have that possibility. And there are ways that Worship Design Studio supports every one of those. Okay, so let's take a look at fully scripted for Easter, what we have for that. My favorite fully scripted worship series for Easter is this: Dare to Dance, which was last year, Roll Down Justice, which was a few years ago, Heart of the Matter, which was at the height of the pandemic, but Jen and I just spent the last 2 weeks updating that for in-person worship, because when we first did it, we were all in lockdown. So we tweaked those scripts and we have that ready for you in a more in-person or actually hybrid version. And then Beguiled by Beauty is an ordinary time series that, if you haven't done it, could also work for Easter season. All right, so let's take a look at these a little bit more, and then I'll answer any questions about them when we get through this. So Dare to Dance again. Now this is lectionary year B. Let me say something about lectionary fully scripted series. If you are a church that religiously follows the lectionary and you have people who are studying the lectionary and they're paying attention to what year you're on, then you're not going to use this because it's year B and not year C, which we're in right now. But if you don't follow the lectionary religiously, so to speak, then, every cycle of that Revised Common Lectionary has to do with the theology of the Easter season. It's just choosing different scriptures. So you could absolutely use it. So here, let's look at the trailer. So Dare to Dance Again, I'm telling you what, people had a great time with this. It coincided with the Jerusalem dance craze. So it had people dancing all over with umbrellas. It was so much fun. So if you have not used that, if you're a new subscriber since after Easter season last year, you probably have not used this. And it is, the umbrellas, people who have done it can tell you that it created lots of color and this wonderful image of dancing in the rain. So no, everything in the world is not okay. It's not all fixed, right? Resurrection happened and yet the world went on and we still have suffering. So what do we do with that theology, right? Well, we dance in the rain, right? That's what the Christian message is. So Dare to Dance is a wonderful one to do that. And it comes with, we made threshold moments, video threshold moments for each one of those. And because it's one that's already done, and this is the great thing about becoming a subscriber after and using an older series, especially from the last couple of years, is that there's all kinds of things that people created, right? And we posted that so you can use that. So there's lots of experience and lots of people who already did it, and you can draw on that. So that's one that if you haven't done it, that would be a really fun one to do. Roll Down Justice. This was created a few years ago, originally for Lent, and then I tweaked it for the Easter season. I mean, we call it an anytime series, but it has an Easter through Pentecost scripts for each one of those. And it's based on our baptismal vows and how they call us to social justice. I mean, it goes through the sort of the baptismal vows, and we have lots of people in different denominations, but our baptismal vows from one denomination to another have baked into them some very core theology around how our baptism calls us to ministry and calls us to resist evil in all its forms, calls us to make a better world. And so that's what this series is about. And it features the incredible music of my friend, Mark Miller, and the poetry of another friend of mine, Bishop Luttrell Miller Easterling. Let's take a look at this trailer.
In the midst of pain, I choose love. In the midst of pain, I choose love. In the midst of pain, sorrow falling down like rain, I await the sun again. I choose love. I choose love. In the midst of war, I choose peace. In the midst of war, hate and anger keeping score, I will seek the good once more. I choose peace. I choose peace.
So, in the midst of war, I choose peace. How perfect is that? Deep breath. So that was one of the songs, an example of one of the songs that we feature. We feature a different one from Mark every week. That comes with videos that you can play of Mark singing it, or you can have your congregation sing it. And you can tell, Mark is really, really good at congregational music. That's easy to learn, easy to catch on. And so I just, it's repertoire that I think your congregation will love and will become part of your repertoire. So Roll Down Justice, powerful, powerful. The anchor image on that one is a waterfall, and it's a fabric waterfall. And every week people write prayers on strips of blue cloth, and you tie that and it gets longer and longer. That waterfall, that justice that flows like an ever-flowing stream gets longer and longer. And people have found this to be very powerful. Again, it's another one of those older series that if you do, you'll be able to see photos of what people did before. You'll get lots of jump starting from people who've done it before. Okay, heart of the matter. This was in 2020, in the height of the pandemic. I slapped this thing together because, like, in a week, because people needed something to help them. And so, as I said, Jenna and I just spent the last couple of weeks redoing it for in-person worship or hybrid worship, but still it's written about that early Christian community and people around tables. And so what if you spent the Easter season, and you could even use this as a summer season, right? It's not so tied to the Easter message, and we need Easter all the time anyway, but it could be used as a summer series, and you could do it around tables. So either in your sanctuary, if you have flexible seating, set up tables, or do it outside, do it in the fellowship hall, but it would be a nice break, right? A nice kind of different kind of thing. And it gives the preacher a little break, because you don't preach as long, because you're going to have discussion around tables, right? And so I'm kind of excited about churches who haven't used that or didn't use that at the height of the pandemic, getting to use that again. The heart of the matter. Let me just, I'm going to show you, we were still on Facebook at the time we did this. And this is what people just did, all kinds of heart-based things, really creative things. And so we have these pictures and a link to this group in the Worship Design Studio. And you can see people were just, there's a dance party involved. And, it's a very, it acknowledges pain really well. And yet it says, in the midst of that, we have to keep our spirits up, right? Because that was really the thing in 2020 as well. And so I think there's a dance party one. I think that your folks would really enjoy this. And it uses children in a kind of a central way, because it doesn't have a children's time per se, but the whole end of the service is a way that children can come up and really lead the congregation. So that's heart of the matter. Again, we've just redone that. And Jenna, I'm going to have you put the links to a lot of these things in the chat in the second half, as we talk to some of these things, as well as like planning the liturgical year, the design process lesson, those things that we've talked about. That will be great. So finally, Beguiled by Beauty is, if you are a subscriber, that was in summer of 2020. Again, I'm just so excited when I get new subscribers, brand new ones, because there's so much you can choose from. Beguiled by Beauty, such a beautiful series that I created based on a book by a friend of mine, Wendy Farley, amazing theologian, talking about how our love for beauty, that God was beguiled by the beauty of the world, and that when we are beguiled by the beauty of the world, that is the seedbed for compassion. So let's take a look at this. I can hear those bells and it takes me right back to lockdown, because we were in lockdown and those bells are in my backyard. And I sat there and listened to those bells, and that anchor image came to me because I was reading Wendy's book, or her manuscript, because it wasn't even published yet, and listening to those bells in the wind during lockdown. And so that sense of the spirit moving among us, the beauty of nature and the wind, just a beautiful. And because it was during lockdown, we created 4 videos for each service. So even if you are, well, especially if you're doing hybrid, where you have people at home, you have people in the space, you're using video in the space, both for people in the space and at home, that has lots of video associated with it that you could use or not use. Just use the liturgy if you're not going to use the video. So it uses For the Beauty of the Earth as the theme song. And yeah, it's just really a beautiful series. Again, it's not just about appreciating beauty, but understanding that when we appreciate beauty, we are compelled to create a better world and a better life for all those beautiful beings and the beautiful planet. All right, so those are my favorite fully scripted worship series for Easter. Let's talk just a little bit about DIY. 2 things that in the DIY that subscribers have access to only, and that is Cup of Freedom, which is the Revised Common Lectionary Year C series that I created. It's based on a song by that same name, the Cup of Freedom. I will take the cup of freedom and call on the name of God. It's like this really has a strong beat in it, and the choir has this sort of backup thing, and then you have the congregation singing that, and it's really fun. And so this idea that the cup of freedom, the cup is overflowing, right? That's the resurrection message. The cup of freedom is overflowing. And so each week is the freedom to sing, the freedom to love, the freedom to bring peace. I can't remember off the top of my head, but each one is freedom to do something. And it's based on the Revised Common Lectionary. So as a DIY, of course, we have lots of ideas, and then you're going to create your order of worship based on those ideas. So I want to show you, we didn't have a Pinterest board for this. And so one of my favorite things to do is to take the anchor image and go to Pinterest and start finding. So I did that for Cup of Freedom. And cups, there's so many things we could do with cups, glasses, mugs, and one of the things, you can make candles out of cups, you can decorate, you can paint. I mean, there's lots of DIY fun things to do, but look at these. Everybody's saying, go to Dollar Tree and get white ceramic mugs. How fabulous, right? What if you especially if you're a small church, right? This is the good thing about a small church, is that what if you could make mugs, cups for folks and give it to visitors maybe at Easter and invite them to come back for the Cup of Freedom series, right? How fun would that be? So Cup of Freedom, it's a really, I really like it. It's again, a DIY, and you can make of it what you want to make of it. We've got lots of ideas in there. The other one that's DIY that I love so much, and you can see there in that graphic that we have many DIY series for Easter, but these are just my favorites. Resurrection Stories is one of my favorite. And it is about what is our story? What is our resurrection story? And so that idea that resurrection isn't just this theological concept or this thing in the past. We can have resurrections in our own lives again and again. And so what it invites you to do is to create a series where people tell their resurrection stories, people who are willing to do that. So kind of a witnessing to how resurrection happens in our lives. I record and watch the Sunday morning Jane Pauley Sunday morning news show. It's a news magazine show. And even though they cover the news, there's lots of good stories in there about, positive things. And I love that format. I just, we have so much bad news. What's the good news, right? And so it could be a season of proclaiming what's good in the world, how people are rising to adversity and overcoming or resurrecting their lives in different ways. And that can happen in many, many different ways, small and large, right? So I love that series. And so that's something that, especially in this time period, when there's a lot of bad news, when it feels like there's so much unrest, when it feels like we hear bad news every day, prolonged war, refugee it's just kind of overwhelming. So this could be a wonderful way to focus on how resurrection keeps happening, even in the midst of death. So I commend that to you as well. Yeah, a lot of transitions, and some folks making transitions, unexpected transitions. And that's, I can't remember whether it was the Sunday morning news show I was talking about earlier or something else, but an interview with someone who was talking about, we're in the middle of another pandemic, and it's a mental health one. And because it's more difficult to see or put, it's less tangible, we don't talk about it enough, although there are plenty of people talking about it. But we have to really take this seriously, that people are going through transitions they never dreamed of before the pandemic. And that's what makes our roles, supporting roles in the lives of people, such an important, it's always been important to be in ministry, but to remember that worship is not just worship, it's also pastoral care, right? It is an act of pastoral care. It's an act of spiritual direction. And that has always been really, really front and center for me. My PhD is in worship and ethics, because I think that these two are incredibly linked, but it could have easily been worship and pastoral care, worship and spiritual direction, because I really believe that that's the role that worship can play, especially if we have a good metaphor that speaks and is memorable to people, and that they can use to take a look at their lives and hear a good word and keep going. So thank you for all you do, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for spending some time with me this morning. It's great to see your faces.
Well, thank you. I don't know if I could have gotten through the last 2 years without you and the worship design studio and all the staff, because
Totally agree with that.
you really helped. Even when I would use other series, I've learned so much from this that has really helped. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
I want to make one comment.
Yes.
I literally have sometimes sat as Sherry, thank you. We need to say those things to you, Marcia, because I know I saw how excited you were when people turned on their video or people were attending, because we're in those same roles. It's truly exciting. And I can't, like Sherry saying, not feeling alone. I literally sometimes look at your past videos so I didn't feel so alone in planning worship. And I thought, here's when there was no, I was the worship team.
Yeah.
So thank you for being on my worship team.
Oh, that means so much to me. Thank you so much for articulating
Much
that. It
appreciated.
really means a lot to me.
Much appreciated.
And you're spot on. Thank you.
All right.